How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the House hearing that's happening right now as I speak, which is Friday, July 31st, 2020, about the virus. Now, normally I don't watch these. I have minimal interest in them because nothing ever happens as a result. Sometimes they may have something happen. I can't just say never. I can never say never, but generally it's just kind of a dog and pony show. Both sides attack each other, and it's all for the cameras. It's a political posturing type of game. But this one here, I got to highlight because of what happened between Jim Jordan and Dr. Anthony Fauci. All right. Jim Jordan was grilling Fauci about the virus. You know, Fauci was trying to be vague and whatnot, trying to give these little canned answers, but Jim Jordan was not going for it. Now, before I go any further, let's roll the clip. In this clip, you'll see the full exchange in its full context between the two of them, between Jordan and Fauci. After we get done with that, I'll talk about what was said and done there. Then I'll give you my 2 cents, my deep, detailed analysis, and then I'll wrap it on up with a nice bow on top. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
The chair now recognizes for 5 minutes Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, do protests increase the spread of the virus?
Do protests increase the spread of the virus? I think I can make a general statement.
Well, 500,000 protesters on June 6th alone. Yeah. I'm just asking that number of people. Does it increase the spread of the virus?
Crowding together, particularly when you're not wearing a mask, contributes to the spread of the virus.
Should we limit the protesting?
I'm not sure what you mean. How do we say limit the protesting?
Should government limit the protesting?
I don't think that's relevant to.
Well, you just said if it increases the spread of the virus. I'm just asking, should we limit it?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine what the government can do in a forceful way.
Well, you make all kinds of recommendations. You make comments on dating, on baseball, on everything you can imagine. I'm just asking you. You just said that protests increase the spread. I'm just asking you, should we try to limit the protests?
No, I think I would leave that to people who have more of a position to do that. I can tell you.
Government stopping people from going to church, Dr. Fauci?
Yeah.
Last week in the Calvary Chapel case, 5 liberals on the Supreme Court said it was okay for Nevada to limit church services. Justice Gorsuch said it best. He said there's no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement that avoid crowds of any type, no matter where you are, because that leads to the acquisition and transmission. And I don't judge one crowd versus another crowd. When you're in a crowd, particularly if you're not wearing a mask, that induces the spread.
It's a simple question, Doctor. Should we limit the protests? Government is obviously limiting people going to church. And look, there's been no violence that I can see at church. I haven't seen people during a church service go out and harm police officers or burn buildings. But we know that, for 63 days, 9 weeks, it's been happening in Portland.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one night in Chicago, 49 officers were injured. But no limit to protests. But boy, you can't go to church on Sunday.
What was the?
I don't know how many times I can answer that. I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm just going to tell you.
You've opined on a lot of things, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, but I've never.
This is something that directly impacts the spread of the virus, and I'm asking your position on the protest.
Yeah, I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm telling you what it is, the danger. And you can make your own conclusion about that. You should stay away from crowds, no matter where the crowds are.
Government has stopped people from going to work. In fact, just in New Jersey 4 days ago, Ian Smith, Frank Trombetta were arrested for trying to operate their business, their gym. They were arrested. But my bet is if these two individuals who own this gym were outside just in front of their gym, and all the people who were working out in their gym were outside protesting, they'd been just fine. But because they were in the gym working out, actually running their business, they got arrested. Do you think that's okay?
I'm not going to opine on who gets arrested and who does not. You get where I'm going. I'm telling you, as a public health official, I say crowds.
Do you see the inconsistency, though, Dr. Fauci?
There's no inconsistency, Congressman.
So you're allowed to protest millions of people on one day in crowds yelling, screaming, but you try to run your business, you get arrested? And if you stood right outside of that same business and protested, you wouldn't get arrested? You don't see an inconsistency there?
I don't understand what you're asking me as a public health official to opine on who should get arrested or not. That's not my position. You could ask it as much as you want.
You've advocated for certain businesses. You've advocated for certain businesses to be shut down. I'm just asking you on your position on the protest. I haven't seen one. We've heard a lot about hair salons. I haven't seen one hairstylist who, between haircuts, goes out and attacks police or sets something on fire. But we've seen all kinds of that stuff during protests, and we know the protest actually increased the spread of the virus. You've said that.
I said crowds. I didn't say specifically. I didn't say protests do anything.
So the protests don't increase the spread of the virus?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I just want an answer to the question. Do the protests increase the spread of the virus?
I don't have any scientific evidence that anything. I can tell you that crowds are known, particularly when you don't have a mask, to increase the acquisition and transmission. No matter what. So
you don't have a position on whether the protests increase the spread of the virus or don't increase the spread of the virus?
I'm saying that crowds, wherever the crowds are, can give you an increased probability that there's going to be acquisition and transmission.
But do you understand Americans' concern? Protesting, particularly according to the Democrats, is just fine, but you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't go to church. There's limits placed on all three of those fundamental activities, First Amendment activities, but protesting is just fine.
You know, all right, so you saw that, you heard that. Now, let's just get straight to it. Let's start from the top. Jim Jordan asked a very simple question. Do protests increase the spread of the virus? That's what he led with. And if you notice, he was asking the same question throughout the entirety of that clip. Fauci didn't really answer. All right. Now, Fauci was trying to say, well, I don't want to be specific. It's like, nah, wait a minute. You have been specific. You have opined on other things. OK, you've been giving interviews on Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, Amazon, also on NBC with Chuck Todd. You've been answering some very specific questions with specific answers. Okay, there's a whole list of 10 places that Fauci said you shouldn't go if you want to eliminate or reduce the spread of the virus. He spoke about cruise ships, gyms, bars, churches, everything. He spoke about specifically, and he told you why you shouldn't be there. You know, he's a infectious disease expert. So you would ask him a question about the protest because there's obvious things going on at a protest. All right. If you are not socially distancing, you might be wearing the mask, you might not be wearing the mask, and then the physical element to it, like the violence and the fighting and whatnot. I mean, surely if you got 1,000 people in like a mosh pit and they're all fighting, if they got masks on or no mask on, it don't really matter because you got all kind of bodily fluids escaping the mask and everything else. You know, that can't be healthy. So he should be able to answer that question specifically, but he wants to kind of, oh, no, I don't, it's about crowds. It's about, wait a minute. No. See, you're playing games here, and this is not anything different than what the left does. All right. They'll talk about funerals, or you can't go to a funeral with more than 10 people, but they can have funerals. I saw John Lewis's funeral. I saw many more than 10 people, and they were not socially distant. All right. Now, granted, the church was not filled to the brim. It was not filled from the window to the wall. Maybe they didn't want to have that for optics reasons, but I counted at least 50 people in the church. So, I mean, if you're a celebrity or an important person like a George Floyd, then you can have more than 10 at your funeral. I'm just trying to figure out what makes sense here. And what Jim Jordan was getting at was, right on point. The government, who is, in my humble opinion, led by Fauci and Birx as it relates to their the virus response, they're saying, well, no more than 10 in a funeral. You gotta distance 6 feet in a restaurant and gyms as well. That's going to be dangerous. They're getting this information from Fauci, Birx, and the whole squad. So if I have a question about these things, about any inconsistencies, I'm going to come to Fauci. But he's been inconsistent himself. He's an inconsistent person. Okay. First, when the whole thing pops with the virus back in like March or so, he was saying the masks don't really help. They might block a droplet or two, but it's really for healthcare professionals and those that are sick. That's what he was saying. Now he's saying wear a mask all the time. Matter of fact, if you got some goggles, put them on too. All right. So he's kind of a flip-floppy person, inconsistent, and he's being intentionally vague. Now, I wonder why. Is it because of the Bill Gates connection? Is it because he wants to push this drug called remdesivir rather than something else we know about, which I won't say, but you already know what it is? I mean, what's the actual motive here? Is it because he's, aligned with the Democratic Party? You know what? People, when I say people, I mean those on the left, they like Fauci because they see him as an insider for their side. They see him as a mole in the operation. So a guy like that, I mean, is he compromised with what's really going on? I'm not going to say he's not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I can make that assertion. No, that's not in my wheelhouse. But what I will say is that these answers that he was giving Jim Jordan and then kind of the flippant attitude, waving them off, that kind of stuff right there is like, man, look, I'm going to do what I want. So what? But I'm glad that Americans were able to see that. So it ain't just me saying it or just guessing it. You see it right there. If you give interviews on other stations where you're very specific about where you should go, where you shouldn't go, and what you should do while you're at a certain place to prevent the spread of the virus, then when it comes to a protest specifically, you got to avoid crowds. Okay, well, if it's about crowds, then why would you be specific about church, about gyms, about restaurants, about schools? I mean, why mention those places if it ain't about the specific place? Okay, if you listed 10 places you can catch the virus, why not add number 11, big protests? It kind of makes sense to me. If you're going to close down a restaurant, surely you shouldn't be able to have the protest. He should be able to say that and say why. Like I was saying earlier about all the fighting and the tussling and whatnot. But hey, I think we all know what's happening at this particular point in time. We're waking up to the nonsense. Do as I say, not as I do. That's pretty much the motto of the leftist government. Even some of those that are in the Trump administration that really shouldn't be there. I'm not saying fire Fauci. I'm not saying get rid of Fauci, but I'm not saying it either, if you catch my drift. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Do you think that Fauci was like a flip-flopper, fish out of water, not being consistent, although he had been very specific and very consistent before? If that's your viewpoint, let me know why in the comments below. Or am I just tripping? Am I just overreacting? Is it just me wanting to do whatever I want, not wear a mask? Is my personal feelings about what's happening clouding my judgment and clouding my ability to see what I saw on camera with my own two eyes? If that's your viewpoint, let me know why in the comments below. You know where I stand at. I've made it crystal clear. I think you got guys like Fauci and Birx and others that are in government who are hypocritical. They'll say specific things about specific places, but not about other specific places. All right. If you're going to say don't go to church, don't go to school, don't go to work, don't go to the gym, the bar, anywhere like a cruise ship, then why not also say protest? Be one way all the time. That's all I ask. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.